Richard had sent a limo and picked me up, and I ended up um, staying at the Carolina Pines Hotel where Richard was living.
Okay.
Rehearsed for a couple of weeks, and next thing I know, I'm in Las Vegas opening up the show for Elvis Presley at the International Hotel in Las Vegas.
Hello, you beautiful music creatives. My name is Mac Boris. I'm the founder of Musician Guidance, and it is my privilege to officially welcome you all to the Musician Guidance podcast. For today's episode, I'm joined by my co-host, Ben Penner. Ben, I like that we're matching on the flannel today. How are you doing?
Looking good, Mac. I'm doing great. Excited to be here for the episode.
Right on, and me too, because we have the honor to be joined by a legendary drummer, musical director, and producer that was discovered by Little Richard and invited to London by the Beatles band member George Harrison to live in his castle and record on the 33 and a third album. He has also opened for Elvis Presley, performed on the first ever airing of Saturday Night Live, and collaborated with many world-renowned musicians, including Elton John, Tina Turner, and Stevie Wonder. Without further ado, it is my honor to welcome the legendary Alvin Taylor to the podcast. Alvin, you're looking great. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing very well, Mac. Ben, welcome. Good to see you guys. Thank you for welcoming me and having me on the show.
It's really our pleasure. And are you chatting in from Palm Springs today?
I'm from Palm Springs, California. Yeah.
Right on. I was in Palm Springs about 6 months ago, and I'll let you in on a little secret. I gave your star on the Palm Springs Walk of Stars a little scrubbing, so you can go to bed tonight knowing it is the shiniest one there now. Okay?
How precious.
To kick us off here, Elvin, you have some incredible accolades and experience, and we'll touch on that a little later. But in the meantime, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself? Who exactly is Elvin Taylor?
Well, I'm a grandfather. I'm a father. I'm a husband of one wife. Uh, I have 13 grandchildren, actually 14 grandchildren,
Wow.
five great grandchildren, uh, three boys and a girl. They're all grown and I live in Palm Springs, California, and I'm full of joy and full of peace and happiness. And fortunately, I know how to live. It took me a lot of years to learn how to do that.
Mm.
But it's all about respect and love for others. Even though someone might see something different from me and I might not even like the idea of what they see, I have to respect other people's visions and what other people see and what other people think, whether I think it's good or not. Just about loving everybody and appreciating um, getting along with other people in this world. That's who I am, what I am, and what I strive to be.
I love that. We need more people like you, Elvin. In all honesty, that's a great perspective you have, and you touched on it. Kind of took you some time to maybe get to where you wanted to be with your emotions or just loving life. I think as you described it there, you got discovered at 14 years of age by Little Richard. That is a very young age. So, I guess first and foremost, how did that come about? And then, can you touch on kind of the fame that came with that and how you handled it?
Well, I was working as a busboy at the Biltmore Hotel in Palm Springs. The Biltmore Hotel is still there today. Uh, at the time, there was a band called the Soul Patrol,
Okay.
and they would play, and the drummer would get very inebriated and couldn't perform, couldn't play. So one night, you know, I decided enough is enough. I'll let this guy know that I know how to play. Let the guitar player Arky in the band,
Mhm.
Arky was his name. I'll let him know that I can play. And he was like, get out of here, kid. You bother me, like sort of thing.
Right.
And I didn't give up. I kept telling them over and over, hey, I can really play. And so I said, okay. So he decides to audition me on one Saturday. And that was an opportunity that changed my life because he really liked me and thought he would tell the other members of the band, and the other members of the band were going like, get out of here. You got to be kidding that. Come on. It's the same way. He was like, no, really, he can really, really, really play. And he says, and, when Ernie's, not himself, we'll ask him to sit in. But we had one other challenge. They had to talk to the hotel owner and get the okayed with him. And finally, with some misgiving, the owner of the hotel was like, well, hey, he's my bus boy. And, the tables have got to be busted. Like, well, what if all the tables are a bus and everything is okay? And, okay, well, as long as his tables are a bus, yeah, I guess he could play. So the owner consented to allow me to play with the band. And one night, the drummer got drunk. He sat out. I sat in. In walked Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Little Richard, Billy Preston.
Incredible.
I knew who Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra were. I had no idea who Billy Preston, and I had no idea who Little Richard were. And so Little Richard ended up meeting me in the kitchen as I was putting some dishes away. And he was like, ooh, honey, I ain't seen a drummer like this since I left Macon, Georgia. I mean, I'd never heard of Macon, Georgia. Macon, Georgia. And I was like, when I heard you play them drums, my big toe just shot straight up in my boots, and I wanted to scream like a white lady. And I'm like, man, this guy, it was like kind of interesting. It kind of scaring me a little bit, actually. It's frightening. But he's like, I want you to be in my band. So when he's like, I want you to be in my band, I'm thinking, he's got this headdress on, and I grew up on the Indian reservation. The Agua Caliente Cahuilla Band of Indians, and so I'm thinking that maybe, he's an Indian chief or something. So, you want me to play in your band of Indians, or what? I mean, I don't. So I had no idea who this guy was, but finally he gave me his phone number and told me to have his mom to call him, and asked if he could call my mom. And finally he called my mom and asked my mom if I could be in his band. My mom was like, absolutely not, under no circumstances. And so Richard, not wanting to be outdone, had his manager Bumps Blackwell to call and try to find out what the concerns were. Now Bumps was a great negotiator. Of course, if you're able to negotiate, an opportunity to open up the show for Elvis Presley at the International Hotel in Las Vegas, you got to be doing pretty good as a negotiator. So he had negotiated this job for Richard to open up the show for Elvis Presley. And so Bumps came in and just started talking and negotiating with my mom about what her concerns were. And my mom said, hey, he's only 14 years old and he hadn't even finished school yet. For crying out loud, he's got to go to school. And so I guess Bumps Blackwell was like, well, yeah, we're going to have tutors with him on the road, and he'll have a bodyguard. He'll have, a joining suite with Little Richard, and, the bodyguard will be there to make sure everything is okay with Alvin. And by the way, he's going to get X amount of dollars. He's going to be getting paid this.
Right.
And my mom was like, could you repeat that again? and of course, at the time, I'm thinking that maybe, my mom is adding up the mortgage. Okay, well, man, that's what I pay every month, and he's going to be getting that on a weekly basis. When do I help him pack? Was the next question. And so I ended up in Los Angeles at first. Richard had sent a limo and picked me up, and I ended up staying at the Carolina Pines Hotel where Richard was living. Rehearsed for a couple of weeks, and next thing I know, I'm in Las Vegas opening up the show for Elvis Presley at the International Hotel in Las Vegas.
That is incredible.
Long story, but I tried to make it as short as possible.
Well, I mean, it's a super, super fascinating story. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Alvin, I just wanted to touch on it at such a young age. The fame that came with that. How did you handle that along the way? I'm so curious.
Well, I never looked at it as fame. I just looked at it as an exciting job. I had this is a whole lot better than being the dishwasher at the Biltmore Hotel or the busboy. I had just gotten promoted from dishwasher to busboy, and it was exciting to be a busboy. I said, "Wow!" But now here I am from busboy to being Little Richard's drummer, opening up the show for Elvis Presley at the International Hotel. And like I said, I didn't know who Billy was, and I didn't know who a lot of the people were, but we had this one guitar player that played guitar in our band by the name of Jimmy James. And after a while, someone said, "Hey, come check this album out. Man, look at Jimmy James. Man, he's sure moving up in the world." And I looked at the album. I'm like, Jimmy James, that's a guitar player in our band. That ain't no Jimmy James, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's like Jimi Hendrix. Rather, they were saying Jimi Hendrix, and I'm like, Jimi Hendrix. This is no Jimi Hendrix. This is Jimmy James. This is the guitar player in our band, And so, I mean, Jimi Hendrix was being born out of that, and of course, Richard worked with a lot of people. He had a lot of people playing in his band. James Brown was working with him, and just a lot of people were in Little Richard's band before they ever became famous. And Jimi Hendrix was a guitar player, known as Jimmy James, and I didn't know him as Jimi Hendrix. I knew him as Jimmy James.
Right.
Right. How long were you working with Jimi Hendrix for? Were you in the band together?
Well, Jimi Hendrix was on and off. He never he was never really a normal regular type of guitar player. He had other stuff that he was doing. I know there was talk about him going to England, and he was going to be involved in working with some people over there in England for a while. And next thing I know, he came back with Mitch Mitchell and the other Mitch Mitchell, the bass player, and the drummer for the band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and Noel Reddings and Mitch Mitchell, the drummer. So he was not the regular, normal get on the bus and ride like type of a player. Right. He never was with that in Richard's band. He was always, if he was going to play, he was kind of a guest appearance type of thing.
Okay. Very well. I got to ask you, I mean, you went from busboy to opening up for Elvis Presley in a very short time. I know there are millions of drummers, artists, producers, vocalists, just music creatives that would love to do the same, would love to go from busboy to touring the world, would love to give up their 9-to-5 job to go full time in music. Do you have any advice, for those type of people?
Yeah, eat your heart out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Stick to your guns. Decide what you want to do. I never opt to be famous or to work in a famous band. I just wanted to play drums. Since I was 8 years old, growing up in the church, and the drummer getting all excited and jumping off the drums and, in ecstasy, dancing while the rest of the band was playing, dancing up and down the aisles, in this Pentecostal church. They call it the Holy Roller Church, From that point to see that happen, all the way to hearing people saying, and my mom's her name was Eula. My mom's name was Eula, and the people go, Miss Eula, you ought to get that boy a drum set. And my mom was like, oh yeah, yeah. Why don't I get your son a drum set? It can drive you nuts. I'm like you know. So, but it was exciting to see people kind of like tell my mom what a great drummer I was when they would hear me play.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I would use this to just be a drummer because that's what I wanted to do. For all my life, I wanted to play drums. So was just I never thought about playing with anybody famous or being in anybody's famous band or becoming famous myself. Or I just wanted to play drums. That's all since the age of 8. And so finally, at the age of 14, I got this opportunity and chance to play. And so if I were to give any advice, just, hey, make it up in your mind that that's what you're going to do, and stick to it. Do it.
Mm-hmm.
Do everything that you need to do to develop that. And that's what I did. I continued to practice in the garage. After school, I would, come in. I'd play for a couple hours, and I just continued on and off to do whatever I would need to do to become better at what I was doing.
Right. So I guess the age-old question is, did your mother get you a drum set? And then she put you out in the garage?
Finally, she did.
She
She finally did get a drum set. But this was after many attempts of other people giving me snare drums and,
okay.
Makeshift drum set, all kinds of attempts. I remember her buying me a drum set for Christmas, and by the evening, it was already torn up, the heads. But it was because it wasn't really a real drum set,
Right.
So,
yep.
But then I guess she began to realize what a real drum set was, and ended up getting me a drum set where if I hit on the heads, it wouldn't bust,
Nice.
That's right. So we had touched on a little bit more about like your earlier life, your earlier career, kind of moving a little forward in your career. It's been known that you had denied Jerry Goldstein's offer to play with the band War, and I was just wondering what went into the decision-making process when deciding that they weren't going to be the right fit for you.
Well, I never wanted to really be a member of a band type of thing. I had met Billy Preston, who was our keyboard player with Little Richard. He was the organist, and Richard played piano and sung, did the singing. I remember at one part of my life, Richard going on a vacation, a hiatus. I used to call it a hyenas. I had no idea. I couldn't mention it. I couldn't pronounce it. But Richard always talked about going on a hiatus, and I finally went to Billy and I said, "Hey, Billy, what's a hyenas?" And Billy was kind of confused. Well, what do you mean? He said, "Where'd you hear that word from?" I said, "Well, Richard said he was going on one. He was going on a hyenas." And Billy sort of laughed and said, "Well," he says, "Yeah." I said, "What's a hiatus?" A hyenas. He said, "Oh, you mean a hiatus?" I said, "Oh yeah, a hiatus." He said, "Well, a hiatus means Richard's going on a vacation, but what that means for you and I is that we're out of work." Yeah, I thought,
Right.
okay, we're out of work and Richard's going on a vacation. So um, Billy was telling me about a friend named Tony Jones and Suzanne DePass and a bunch of other people over at Motown who could keep us working, uh, doing like Smokey Robinson, Marvin Gaye, the Jacksons individually, collectively, various different people's albums. We could play on all these Motown, Stevie Wonder, all these different artists, the Supremes, Diana Ross. Okay, we could do everybody's album while we were over at Motown working. So that's how I ended up becoming pretty popular drummer, a session guy, uh,
Right.
studio drummer. And so when Richard would go on hiatus, I'd end up working with other artists, and that's how I ended up sort of developing a career as an independent artist, and got a chance to learn more about being an independent artist. Thanks to Billy Preston, he was an amazing session musician and a musician's musician that could play anything. Pretty quite awesome player himself.
Right. That's incredible. I love the names you just dropped there. That goes to show the, success you've had in your career, and that's amazing. And I'm also gonna, ask one thing, and I'm intrigued about, I guess, how it came to be and also what it was like. So I know that you were invited by George Harrison himself to live in his castle. How did that come about? And Elvin, I know you have some cool stories. Are you able to share any of them of what it was like living there with George?
That's awesome. That's probably one word I could use.
Right. Fair.
In connection with George. Um, I had the privilege of meeting George through a group called the Five Stair Steps. You might
Okay.
recall they had the song "Ooh Child." Ooh child, things are gonna get
Yeah.
easier. Ooh child, things will get brighter. Anyway, they had this song that was out there, became pretty. I think Stan Vincent was the one who actually wrote the song,
Okay.
and the Stair Steps made it popular, made it famous. It charted well, and the group kind of disappeared. You know, they were they were like the first of the five, the Jackson Five, like type of groups, singing groups out there. You know, Family of Soul. You know, from Chicago. You know, Kenny Burke, Dennis Burke, Clarence Burke, the Burke brothers, and their father was a police officer who was, I think, was also a musician, and kind of helped develop that band, and got them out there, and um, they had this. They were kind of like a one-hit wonder, but
Hmm.
was pretty much well known because everybody liked them. Um, Even the famous groups like the Jackson Five and all these guys had a lot of respect for the Burke family. And Billy Preston was a good friend of theirs, and um, they had this producer who I had been working with Stevie. His name was Robert Margoloff. Uh, he had a partner named Malcolm Cecil. He and Malcolm were producing Stevie. They did the Innovisions, Fulfilled His First Finale, music of anyway, just three or four different albums they did with Stevie.
Okay.
Music in the Key of Life, songs in the key, songs in the Key of Life. They produced all these albums, and I became a pretty regular with Bob Margoloff, who would call me to do sessions, and um, they Bob and Billy Preston had teamed up to do an album called Second Resurrection from the Stair Steps, and wow! So we were out at Billy's Topanga Canyon home in the studio recording, and I looked through the mirror. You know, on the other side, the studio is kind of split
Yeah.
up. Where you got the studio version, you got the control room, and I'm in the studio and I look in the control room and I see this figure. It looks like that looks like that looks like George Harrison, one of the Beatles. I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just somebody who looks like him. But then, sure enough, I get a word comes out to me saying, "Hey, George Harrison's watching you through the mirror and he's digging what he sees and he likes you." Like,
Yeah.
oh man,
Wow.
it really kind of like turn
Yeah.
it on now.
Yeah. Turn on the
Yeah.
jets.
So the next thing I know is I get a call. Well, first someone asked me, is it okay if they gave my number to George? And I said, sure. And a couple of weeks or so down the road, I get a call from George. And he's saying, hey, I was out at Billy's house in Topanga Canyon and I saw you playing, uh, you know, with Kenny Burke, the bass player, and like the way you play. And I'm getting ready to do an album, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in doing my album. I'm thinking, wow, and it's like, come on, you're kidding me. Is this really George Harrison? That's what I wanted to say, but I could tell with the English accent and all that, and that it was really George and that he really was there at the studio. And so I said, yeah, I kind of got excited. I'm thinking, sure, maybe next week I'll be in the studio with George. Well, come to find out, this is a year later. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, next year. I'm like, oh man, anything can happen a year from now. But yeah, sure, yeah, keep me. And sure enough, a year down the road, um, finally I got a call from his office, Dark Horse Records, lady by the name of Linda, who happened to be his sister-in-law,
Okay.
Linda Aries, called me and had the air air flight and the travel all set up and everything, and for me to meet George in London, where I would then stay at his castle and record the 33 and a third album along with Gary Wright, uh, Billy Preston, Tom Scott, a bunch of other musicians, Willie Weeks, the bass player, David Foster, who ended up becoming one of the one of the world's top producers. And so, yeah, that's how I met George in Billy's little humble abode at the studio out in Topanga.
Right. That's incredible. And I'm going to poke you again to see if you have any cool stories about living there in a giant castle with George himself.
Yeah, it's pretty um, pretty interesting. It was kind of a situation where I'm actually living there at George's castle, and I have to admit I had to pinch myself and say, okay, is this am I just dreaming or am I actually here? And having a chance to meet his beautiful wife Olivia, and boy, they just really treated me really, really nice. I'd never been treated so kind. George
Yeah.
was just the most amazing person, very bright, knew a lot of stuff, was just very kind and knew how to treat people. And
Amazing.
well, we had fun recording a great album. I don't know if you ever heard the 33 and a third album is the
Yep.
title of it.
Oh yeah.
Crackerbox
Yeah.
Palace. And I really love that song. He did a tribute to Smokey Robinson called Pure Smokey. And a song called True Love, Beautiful Girl. And then there was a spoof on the thing where he got sued. This song, this song ain't nothing tricky about it. The song is it ain't black and white, and it doesn't infringe on anyone's copyright. So now, and meanwhile, it's got this bass line going boom, 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 and then you hear Eric Idle from boy um, from the Monty's Python Flying Circus in the background going, "Oh my God, this could be Rescue Me. It could be Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. I could, oh God." And he's going on and on about this bass line that fits the bass line of 20 other songs. It's like, why
Right.
aren't you suing me on this? You sued me for My Sweet Lord. It's crazy. So it was I thought the song was great. Um, George did a video on it and asked me to be the judge to wear uh, this white wig, and but I couldn't do it because I had an engagement coming up with Leo Sayer to go out and tour on the road, and I had to be at a certain place at a certain time, which made me ineligible to be the judge. So I
Mm.
recommended Jim Keltner, who's the drummer who he normally uses. And turned out Jim Keltner ended up being the judge for the video. And boy, we had some fun. We had a lot of fun working with George.
Right on. That's the most important thing. Enjoy what you
Yeah.
do and have fun doing it. Alvin, how about we do some quick fire questions here? Take a little break from the longer questions, and we just hit you with about 9 questions that are just like one word answers, just to, learn a little bit more about yourself. How does that
Okay.
sound? Let's do it. All right, so I can start us off here, Ben. What is the favorite venue? What is your favorite venue that you performed in?
Uh, Probably the Palladium, London Palladium.
Okay.
And then the second question we got here, the first concert you had ever went to.
First concert that I'd ever went to. Who? Probably my brother had a band called Robert Taylor and Current Stock, and they had a pretty big hit record called Time Keeps Ticking By. And I went to one of their concerts. I think that was probably the first concert I'd ever went to.
Okay.
Right
Sounds
on.
like sounds like a lot of the family were into music then. Huh?
Yeah.
Alvin, who is your music idol? Who was someone you looked up to growing up?
Um, wow. That's a hard question.
We ask the tough questions around here, Alvin. No.
Yeah, you do. You do. I'd have to say at the time I really idolized the band Led Zeppelin.
Hmm.
I like Jimmy Page. I like the drummer, and I also like Keith Moon from the Who. I
Right.
like the Who. I'm a rock and roll guy. I mean, I like you know Deep Purple, John Lord, Ian Pace, Ian Gilliam, um, the English blokes. I liked Eric Burden and the Animals. I always wanted to be the drummer in the Animals, but I guess Barry Jenkins and all the other guys that played with the Animals beat me to it. And besides, I was only 4 or 5 years old when they were famous,
Right.
so I was a little too young. But I ended up playing in Eric Burden's band, so the Eric Burden band, which um, I think the question earlier, which I didn't get a chance to answer, um, getting around to the band, I never really wanted to be um, um, a member of a group. I always wanted to be independent. That way, it allowed me an opportunity to work
Sure.
with various different kinds and types of artists, and I wouldn't be stuck playing in one band.
Absolutely.
And then for the next question here, so when you're, not practicing or not touring in the moment on your off days while you're on tour, what would be your favorite thing to do for your pastime?
Well, it depends on where I'm at. If I'm, in a town that I like, you know, uh, if I was in France, maybe I'd go see the Eiffel Tower. If I'm in London, I'd go see Buckingham Palace. So, I mean, it depends on where I'm at and what opportunities that are available to me. I'd like to go see something interesting, go do something interesting. It's because it's hard being stuck in a hotel room, just kind of waiting for the sound check, waiting for the sound check. Okay, another hour.
Sure.
And, yeah, so,
So what was your go-to favorite backstage snack?
wow. I never thought about that. I don't know if I had a
Wait,
favorite. I just like food.
same. Guilty.
Food, anything that's uh well, yeah. I'm into pizzas. I like pizzas and
Good
various, but
taste.
I'm talking about some serious pizza, not just a regular pizza.
Yeah.
Serious pizza. I
Well,
like
let
pizza.
let me ask you then. Does pineapple belong on pizza, Elvin?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's my go-to.
For the next question, I was curious, where was the favorite place you had toured to?
Wow, you would have to do that.
Making you pick a spot.
Well, well,
Yeah.
well. It's a couple of different places actually. I like Italy because the fans in Italy were just like, oh man, they are loyal. They are righteously loyal.
Mm,
And
interesting.
Italy. all over Italy, and then Germany, the Oktoberfest, and boy, it's just I love Germany, and
Awesome.
I remember playing the festivals around Germany, and it's just something that you won't mind doing over and over again.
Why was that? Were
So
they very passionate people or
yeah, extremely passionate. I mean, just yeah,
interesting?
absolutely.
Awesome. I got another tough one here for you, Alvin, but we're all about asking the tough questions. What is the hardest song to play on the drums that you've had to play?
Hmm, that's a very difficult one. I don't recall uh, from us to you
Okay.
that it took me a lot more uh, detail to stop and take a look at and talk about why we're doing certain things. And yeah, from us to you by the stair steps, just intricately detailed. That was probably the most difficult song, uh, even though it's probably the most simplest song. Even though the song is simple, for the drum part, it was very difficult because there's so much to remember,
Okay.
little tiny parts.
And kind of branching off of that, I'm curious, like on average, how long would it take for you to like learn a new song and master it, so to say?
Uh, Good 10 to 15 minutes.
It's
I was
incredible.
expecting days, but all right, 10 to 15 minutes. Wow.
Well, if it were per song, I would say about the third or fourth time through the song, I would have it nailed. Fifth time, no doubt I got it.
Master at work. I wish I could say the same when it comes to basically anything else. I wish I could do that in 15 minutes, but maybe I just got to practice more. But I'm
Too.
gonna ask you this, Elvin. Do you have any
Did I
superstitions?
have any?
Superstitions before a show? Did you have to like spin in a circle 3 times, or did you have to eat a certain fruit? Did you have to put on your right shoe before your left shoe? Did you have any crazy
No,
superstitions like
I,
that?
I never did. Um, I'm one that I have a God of my own understanding that I believe in, that I trust in, and I my thing is that as long as I pray and ask God to guide me and direct me and to lead me and to help me remember my parts, I'm good. As long as I've done that. If
Right.
I don't do that, then I might be in trouble.
And then, sorry, for the last question here for our lightning round. So you've had a bunch of amazing moments in your illustrious career, but now this might not be something you want to remember. But what would you say is the worst on stage hiccup that you had in your career?
Working with Donna Summer, we were doing candle like candlestick park in San Francisco. Was a Fourth of July event where thousands and thousands of dollars were spent on this design for a Fourth of July fireworks show, and there was an earthquake just before we. It was interesting because we got a chance to sit and look at the video and to see how everything would coincide when I would hit the cymbals, how everything would burst into this would happen here and that would be the cue for this. And unfortunately, when we had this earthquake, the earthquake kind of toppled things over in it. And I don't know, I guess they didn't think about what position that the the stuff would these fireworks would take off. And so when it was time for the grand finale, I mean, we had fireworks going over the top of people's heads and shooting
Nice.
all over the place because instead of it standing straight up and ready to go straight up in the air, here it was tilted almost like going right over your head. So it was really dangerous and it was a horrible thing. And boy, it was just lucky nobody got hurt. But to see Donna uh, so upset and angry and disappointed, to say the least, and crying was just a real sad thing. So that's probably one of the worst things I'd ever envisioned and saw on stage.
Well, sorry for having to make you relive it, but with that, you have just completed our quick fire round, so you can give yourself a little pat on the back there.
All right, so one of the biggest moments we saw for your career here was you famously performed on the first ever airing of Saturday Night Live. And I'm just wondering, can you tell us what the experience was like performing at such a historic show still airing today?
Well, I got to tell you, I never dreamed that this show would end up uh, being the magnitude, the type of show that it. I mean, all the stars, Gilda Radner, Chevy Chase, John Belushi, all these people were just normal, regular, everyday people that were backstage that had their door open as you would walk by and you're like, hey, how are you? And not even knowing who you were, they seeing you pass by with your luggage on your way to your dressing room and they want to meet you and hey, come over here, or, come smoke some of this I got, so, it's just kind of funny, interesting and neat people to see them become, world-class actors and actresses, well, actors, world-class actors, and Garrett Morris, and wow, I just never, and the fact that I and I say this, great, being grateful, is that today going out to my mailbox, of all of the television shows, that I play where music went to television shows, movies, commercials. Um, I still get more money from this show, Saturday Night Live, than any of the other shows all put together. And
Wow.
so this show, still, even today, still financially, from a financial perspective, takes care of me financially. And I could have never imagined how powerful and how huge this show was going to be, and how well it takes care of us financially, how well it takes care of me personally financially. So being a primetime player and a person star having a starring role, without being mentioned, I'm the star. I'm a major player. Playing
Right.
drums with Billy Preston, opening up that show is pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it certainly seems like it paid off for you. So, but kind of at the time, was there any part of you thinking that this could be a risk performing on an unproven show like this?
No, it's just another show. It was nice that we put up in a nice hotel and had limousines to and from the gig, but that's normal, when you're you know uh, working with the type of people that I'm working with and doing the kind of shows that I do. And it's all the what's called a rider, which is an attached part of the contract for the various different artists. That's what they ask for. They want beer, they want uh, uh, food backstage, they want all these things that are attached part of the rider.
Hmm.
And so uh, it was just like no other gig. I mean, I didn't know who Gilda Radner was. She's just some other crazy wild chick. And and Chevy Chase is just some other dude, and I never knew them from any different from talking to you guys right now, and so they were not any different. They were just nice, kind people like you guys, and of
Well,
course,
thank you.
intelligent and nice to work with. And so I didn't see it being anything extraordinary other than what it is that I'm doing with you guys right now. It wasn't any more extraordinary than doing what I'm doing right now with you guys. And
Awesome.
so I never expected it to be what it turned out to be.
Absolutely. We did send a limo though. I'm not sure if it ever came, but
Okay. I thought that was the neighbors next door. Okay.
no, we got you covered here, Elvin.
So it feels good to be compared to Gilda Radner and Chevy Chase. I'll take
Yeah,
that any day.
thank you. No, I appreciate the compliments there. And as you touched on there, you've lived the rock and roll lifestyle and you started at a young age, as we talked about earlier. I know you have seen some stuff, maybe some stuff that you weren't supposed to see or maybe shouldn't have seen that young, getting started at 14. But what was the biggest thing getting into the music business that you learned that you didn't know of and then you kind of just were thrown into it? What did you learn from it right away?
Well, never take anything for granted.
Okay.
Um, be grateful for any and everything that you have, good or bad. Even the bad experiences, there's always something to learn good from the bad experiences. So I just learned to not uh, run the show, just allow things to be exactly the way they are,
Hmm.
and to respect everybody, uh, no matter how bad, because uh, there's good in the worst of us, and the best of us. There's some of the worst. So we're all natural, normal, acceptable aspect of what we call human nature, and we have good parts and we have bad parts, and so it's just about learning to accept everything for the way that it is.
I love your outlook. I think I totally agree with you, and I think that's very well said. And so one other question I want to ask, building off that, is you've been in the music business, for a while. You are very successful in it. Over the years, how have you seen it change? And is there anything in particular that you think artists nowadays should
Well,
should know?
it's kind of interesting. I had some guys call me the other day, said, "Hey, we're looking for a record deal. Can you help us out?" So I was like, "Okay." It's like this guy been under and some kind of a lock and key somewhere for the last 20 years. Today, there's no greater time than right now to be an independent artist. Because as an independent artist, I can do things that record labels could never do, or
Exactly.
whatever a record label could do, I could do, and I can do it better. Um, I don't have to worry about getting shelved.
Mhm.
If I got the right monies behind me and I'm using it right, I can do things that record labels probably don't want to take the time to do because they're busy wanting to do that with someone else.
Yep.
So, but if I pick and choose that I want to do that with myself, then I don't have to be worried about doing it for anyone else. I can do it for myself. So now is the greatest time to be an independent artist. There's no greater time than now to be an independent artist. And I've watched, uh, I mean, from the time that it was announced in Silicon Valley that everything was going digital, I've watched things change. And, this is the music industry is a business that changes every day. Every day, this business changes. One day it's one artist is number one, and then the very next day that artist that was number one falls back to the number three spot
Hmm.
or number two spot, and then the person that was in number three takes on number one. So you never know. Someone that says, "Well, we want the number one artist," today they might be ready to sign the autograph, the contract for who that number one artist is, but then 2 days later, since they haven't sent it off yet, they might find out that the number one artist is somebody different than
Right.
what they
Hmm.
thought. So it's something to keep your eyes open for and see the change every day and be available to kind of like. I like my daughter has a favorite saying. She's like, "Dad, hey, just go with the flow. Go with the flow. Go with the flow." So I got that. Go with the flow. Go with the flow. 4 words. Go with the flow. And so I like that things can change today that might not appear to be what it is today. All of a sudden, it can be tomorrow. So you never know. Go with the flow.
Go with the flow. I like it. It's for sure. It's important to make sure you change and adapt to what's going on around you, right? To keep up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're stuck trying to get a deal, you know what I mean? 20, 40 years later, when there is no deal to be getting, the deal is that you go and do something that you want to do rather than sitting around waiting to be discovered by Sony Music
Hmm.
or
Exactly.
some other major label.
Exactly. So a big part of what we see with artists trying to make it is the importance of networking. And so over your music career, you've worked with many artists, many of whom you connected with through other artists you were already working with at the time. And I just kind of wanted to understand more. What was the process of building these connections for yourself?
Well, very important. Um, I remember working um, back in the day, and there was this guy who was a senator at the time, and that same senator became the president of the United States of America, named Barack Obama. And so, had I to just treated this guy like, oh, he's just a senator, he's nobody important, you know. And when he became the president, it's like I might not have gotten invited to the ball, or you never know. You just got to treat everybody with kindness because you never know who's going to be in a position to help you and who you got favor with. I have no idea who you have favor with. You know, George Carlin was the host of the Saturday Night Live show, and somebody needed to get into a show, and um, they, uh, they had to go through George Carlin. So I said, "Hey, tell him that Alvin Taylor, the drummer with Billy Preston from Saturday Night Live, tell him you're his friend." And they ended up getting in the show. So because I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and I knew who George Carlin was, and George got a chance to meet me backstage and know me. And so you just never know. It's always good to be nice to everybody. Yeah, you don't choose your expression. You don't want to be a butthole to anybody. Because if you are, they just might remember you, and they might say, I remember that guy. He didn't smell too well. I don't want to be around him."
For sure, for sure. You definitely want to be genuine. You never know who could be watching and what they might say about you to someone else. So,
Sure, yeah.
absolutely.
So it's yeah, networking is very important. It's always, you never know from the least to the greatest who's going to be the most important person that you need at that time. I could tell you another great story, but I won't go into detail. I knew Clive Davis before he became, Clive Davis. and because I knew him with our band Pacific Gas and Electric, who had a hit record back in the day called "Are You Ready?" While Clive Davis was looking for a job at CBS, and they didn't have a job for him. They only had intern, and Clive ended up getting in the door as an intern person, and the band that he was appointed to was Pacific Gas and Electric. He was our gopher, and so go for this, go for that, go get us some hamburgers, and we always treated him nice. And as a result, I can call today, and whatever office he's in, he'll pick up the phone because he remembers how nice I was with that group.
I think that's a great story. I know on the podcast several months ago, we had Tony Black, who is a Grammy-winning producer, and he said the same thing. He started grabbing coffees for everybody at the studio, and then one day he got asked to I don't remember exactly what his contribution was, but it was on Michael Jackson record. And so exactly what you just said there, like, I think that's very well said, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that has to be said more. The importance of networking, and even if somebody is in a position that is lower than you, you don't know where they're going to be next year. You don't know who they know. You don't know who they're connected to. So I mean, great advice there, Alvin. Yeah. And I guess just final question here before we kind of wrap up is, we've talked a lot about, your successful career. Is there anything on the horizon that you're kind of working towards?
I'll be 71 real soon, and I'm getting to the point where, you know what, I admire some of the guys that are older than me that are still doing it, that are out there. But I'm looking forward to retiring. To tell you the truth, I really am. I don't want to be having to have to be in a city somewhere waiting to pop out from behind the stage with with my drum set when I got grandchildren that are in the city that I can be out taking to Disney World, or going to Disney World with them, or I don't want to have to be. I kind of look forward to taking it easy with the family, and being the husband, being the father, being the lover and the leader in my family, being the great grandfather. Kind of look forward to those things, but at the same time, I also look forward to being able to help those that are in need. I work with an organization called 12 Drummers Drumming. Well, the organization is called the Raven Drum Foundation, where we have a bunch of famous drummers that have worked with people that are famous, and
Okay.
we raise money for the cause of helping people that have been through a lot of trauma, and so working with that organization and raising money and raising awareness about trauma and things like that. I look forward to doing that. I'm more into that than I am to being excited about selling out a 80,000 seat stadium
Hmm.
somewhere.
Well, I mean, that's very admirable. And I appreciate everything you've shared. You've shared some very wise words, some incredible stories. So on behalf of Ben, myself, and the entire community at Musician Guidance, Elvin, I would like to thank you for joining us today. And for those listening in, where can they get in touch with yourself, Elvin?
Alvin Taylor Music. It's just like my name, Alvin
Okay.
Taylor, Taylor, and music, Music. Alvin Taylor Music at gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, I will put, the links below, and the email and all of that. And for all you aspiring drummers, musicians, producers, and artists out there, let Elvin be an inspiration to yourself, that your dreams will come to fruition with hard work, dedication, and an openness to learn. It may be, and it probably will be, a long journey, but nothing worthwhile has come easy. So continue to practice and improve and network, and we hope to see you all living your dream very shortly. Until next time, I've been Mac, that's been Elvin, that's been Ben, and you've been amazing. Take care and keep making music.